All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Terence Crawford and what a former opponent of his by the name of Hank Lundy has to say about he and the Errol Spence Jr. fight and a shocking prediction that he makes. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about a prediction, another prediction coming through for the Errol Spence Jr. Terence Crawford fight. But in this particular instance, it is particularly valuable because it's somebody that's been in the ring with Terence Crawford, and it is a guy named Hank Lundy, who Terence Crawford beat at 140 pounds. Now, before I get into what he says, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you're a longtime subscriber and supporter, if you're new to the channel, thank you for coming back to the channel. Thank you for coming to the channel. And if you enjoy the content, please make sure to hit that like button and hit that subscribe button and hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos. And if you're a longtime subscriber and supporter, make sure you hit that share and that like. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel for all of these videos that we do in the live stream format and in the video format. So let's get into this. A lot of predictions have been made for the biggest fight that hopefully we will get. But this particular video is not about whether or not we're going to get the fight or not get the fight. It's about what will happen in the fight from the perspective of different people who are familiar with the fighters and boxing experts, right? That type of video. In this particular instance, we're going to talk about Hank Lundy, because this is the second professional level fighter in a row recently that has come out and said that they think Errol Spence Jr. is going to win this fight. That was after a good number of Hall of Fame fighters during the Hall of Fame induction this year had picked Terence Crawford. I did a video just the other day about Eddie Chambers and what Eddie Chambers had to say about the fight. And now this one is coming from Hammer and Hank Lundy. Now, if you're not familiar with Hammer and Hank Lundy, fights out of Philadelphia, very, very good fighter, man. Was fighting at 140 pounds, but a kind of a smaller guy, not necessarily the biggest guy. I thought he gave Terence Crawford one of the best fights that I've seen Terence Crawford have. But Terence Crawford winds up beating Hank Lundy by knockout. So on YM Sports Media, and shout out to YSM Sports Media, they do a lot of interviews out of boxing gyms in Philadelphia. Caught up with Hank Lundy and asked Hank Lundy what he thought about the Errol Spence Jr. fight against Terence Crawford, and I thought it was illustrative and enlightening because he gave a perspective of somebody that was in the ring with him and what it was like being in the ring with Terence Crawford at 140 pounds. And this is what he said. He said, first, that he believes that himself and Sean Porter gave the blueprint for how to beat Terence Crawford. And he said that is pressuring Terence Crawford. He said, though, with the difference between himself, Sean Porter, and Errol Spence Jr. is that Errol Spence Jr. is bigger than Terence Crawford, He's a big guy, and he's somebody that really, really, really stays on you. And that is the primary way in which he fights. So he said, with Terence, he said, look, Terence, in order to beat Terence, you got to pressure him. You got to be on top of him. You have got to make him work. And he said that what he notices with other fighters is that Terence Crawford likes to fight. He'll get his rest at mid-range, get his rest outside, at long range. And other fighters have had a difficult time staying on the inside with him and making him work. And he said he believes that that's what Errol Spence Jr. will do. And that's why he predicts a late round stoppage for Errol Spence. Now, he also said about himself that he said the reason that, I really couldn't do that to Terence Crawford. And he gave a lot of respect to Terence. He said, look, man, I just was not big enough. When we were fighting at that weight class, I walked into the ring at 145 pounds. Terence Crawford walked into that ring at 160 pounds. So he was much, much bigger than me. So when you're fighting a bigger guy like that, that stuff starts to wear down on you. And he said, now with Terence Crawford, he's going to be fighting a guy that's moving down from 154 pounds and is a bigger guy, and it is going to be a lot harder to wear Errol Spence Jr. down. And Errol Spence Jr., because of his size and his pressure, will have a better chance at wearing down Terence Crawford through the course of that fight. And he said that he would predict a mid to late round stoppage for Errol Spence Jr. Now, this is somebody just like Tim Bradley, except for the difference between him and Tim Bradley is that this is somebody that has actually fought Terence Crawford. Right now, obviously there's a Sean Porter who leans towards Terence Crawford in the fight, who's been in a fight with both of those guys. And, so obviously there's two ways, a bunch of different ways, people going a bunch of different ways about the fight. Doesn't make one person, you don't know who's going to be right or you don't know who's right or wrong until that fight actually takes place. I just find it interesting that there was such a big, in that particular, let me put it this way, before there was that, the meeting of the Hall of Fame induction, that a lot of people were just calling it every other person would have it go in a different way, right? One person would say Terence Crawford, the other person would say Errol Spence, and it was pretty much split. But right during that pocket of time when Roy Jones Jr., and actually it was Roy Jones Jr., Tarver, and James Toney all kind of gave that prediction for Terence Crawford at the same time. It made it look like all of these Hall of Fame fighters and all these fighters that know what they're talking about were picking Terence Crawford. But after that little part of time when that took place, it's again, people are starting to be asked about it, and they're picking one guy's picking one guy, the other guy's picking another guy, right? Terence Crawford or Errol Spence Jr. So I do think that this is, in a lot of ways, a classic example of a fight that needs to be made, because this degree of who's going to win, is it going to be this guy, is it going to be that guy? That's what that's what boxing fans really want to see. That's what make fights interesting, and when fights should take place. Not as much during fights where everybody just knows, okay, Errol Spence Jr. is about to fight Carlos Ocampo. We know what's going to happen in that fight. Or Terence Crawford is about to fight Igis Kalvanakis. We know what's going to be said and what's going to happen in that fight, right? Now, one thing Hank Lundy did say, though, is that Terence Crawford is getting older, and Terence Crawford is starting to get hit with a lot of shots that he didn't get hit with before. And that may have something to do with age. It may have something to do with the size of the guy. But he also did make note of that, so that's to be taken into consideration. But all in all, man, like I said, man, I'm going to keep talking about this fight because it's interesting. It's what I want to see take place, and it's, not all about the contract negotiations and all that, but, who are the really good fighters and how will the fight turn out? That's a major part of boxing conversations, and it's been happening for the last couple of years around this fight. Hopefully, though, it'll come to conclusion, and we'll get that fight, and we'll get that fight announced soon. Don't know if that's going to happen or not, but hey, here's to hoping. Anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.